I'm Dr. Daniel Berzins, and I'm a physician here at Protea Medical Center. And today I want to talk to you about a really critical component, whether you're 30 or 60, your future health depends on one thing that is really often overlooked, and that is maintaining muscle. Today, I really want to kind of talk about muscle, why it's important, how we preserve and build it, some of the things that we might be facing as uphill battles in preserving our muscle mass, and really what can be done about it. And what do we look at here at Protea when it comes to building a strategy that is rooted really just in metabolic health? One of the things that I share with patients often is muscle is like life insurance. We have this process that starts even as early as 30 to 35 years old in both men and women, process called sarcopenia. Basically, think of muscle wasting, muscle starting to be replaced with fat, muscle starting to atrophy, and even just more difficulty in building and maintaining some of that muscle mass that we had even in our early 20s. One of the things that's going to be really difficult for patients to look at or really get an assessment of in terms of muscle mass is when you're stepping on a scale. Now, a typical home scale is just going to give you your weight, but it's not going to give you any differentials for what does our lean body mass look like? What does our body fat mass look like? And then how does that fare in something like a percent body fat? So, our composition overall. Really, the more muscle we have, and we see this in research studies looking at things as simple as grip strength, really does correlate with all cause mortality. And as that muscle mass continues to atrophy and fade away, our susceptibility to really all types of diseases really increase. Muscle is a critical component to your long term health, not just in terms of healthy body composition, but this is also for healthy cholesterol levels, cardiovascular health, and even preventing cognitive decline. So, when we think of dementia, Alzheimer's, and these things, the other component that's a really common thing that we're treating here at Protea is insulin resistance. Interestingly, the muscle is one of the first places that we notice where insulin resistance starts to happen. If you're working with a doctor, muscle should be a primary topic of importance, especially in terms of improving your metabolic health, improving your body composition, or burning fat. It's a critical component for your longevity, no matter if you're in your 30s or even into your 60s and 70s. Some of the challenges or the uphill battles that we face in preserving our muscle mass come down to some of our age related decline in some of our essential hormones. Things like testosterone, growth hormone, assessed on labs as IGF-1 or insulin like growth factor, even things like cortisol, which actually, when too high, think of high stress, chronic stress. Cortisol is much more of a catabolic hormone acutely. Um, Even looking at things like DHEA, one of our most abundant androgens coming from the adrenal glands, and even other catabolic things like thyroid. If we have an overactivity or a overactive thyroid, such as in hyperthyroidism, we see more catabolic effects in patients as it relates to their body composition. This is why it's not only important to work with a physician who's going to look at things like an in body scale that's going to look at your lean muscle mass, but also getting appropriate lab values, tangibles, things like, again, testosterone typically should be assessed with both free and total testosterone. And even one of the downstream metabolites of testosterone is a really, really critical component that we look at, which is dihydrotestosterone. Now, dihydrotestosterone is actually anywhere from about 10 to 20 times more potent than testosterone itself. And that comes down to what's called its affinity for the androgen receptor. Think of this as just the way that the hormone communicates with the cell. And so, even looking at and assessing DHT levels can really tell us a patient's ability to build lean muscle mass, that anabolic activity that we want, and even just having the primary building blocks for protein synthesis. Now, there are so many different components that's going to influence many of those labs. When we think of insulin resistance and low testosterone in both men and women, those two go hand in hand. When we think of high stress, think of that in our CEOs or even just our blue collar workers working, early mornings and not getting much sleep, or our stay at home moms working around the clock. Those high levels of stress, especially when chronic and repeated, those things can add up and they can be to a detriment, especially in terms of maintaining muscle mass. So it's really important, get a baseline with these. So whichever provider that you're working with, get an idea on, is your body set up metabolically to preserve lean muscle mass? Now, one thing that we can't slow down is time. And so as time goes on, we know that we're going to have to work a little bit harder in order to maintain and build lean muscle mass. Another critical component is our nutrition. So, working with a provider that's going to give you guidance around how to eat and what to eat is also a really critical component in terms of protein. Now, in terms of how that protein, whether it's a animal protein or a plant protein, those are also going to have an impact on your ability to build lean muscle. And there's certain types of recommendations you can make based on even if patients are following a more vegan or a vegetarian diet that might be suitable to still help preserve and maintain lean muscle mass. And that's really where it's important to work with a physician who's well trained in nutrition or getting paired up with one of our nutritionists here at Protea who can really kind of get down into the weeds with you on what is the best protein sources for you, how much should I be eating, and even timing of eating for preserving that muscle mass. Now, one thing patients will often ask me is, hey, if I'm working out, how soon after my workout do I need to be eating protein? Well, the research tells us that timing after a workout isn't important so long as you are getting a sufficient amount of protein through the day. So let's say you're working out first thing in the morning at 6 a.m., and by 7 a.m. you're done, and you're really hoping that you can get some food in by 7:30. If you are aiming for 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body mass, and you are getting that throughout the day, the timing of that protein is not as important as the amount of protein through your day. And we see that in the research studies in terms of actual protein synthesis. Now, for most patients, getting 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body mass is usually something we're having to work up to. Many people are usually pretty deficient in their actual protein goals. And our RDA values that are recommended are really suboptimal and certainly not something that we would recommend in terms of protein or muscle building. Those are just essential for just survival. Typically, this is going to range, like I said, easy calculation would be 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body weight. This would look like if you are looking to be 175 pounds, that would be aiming for 175 grams of protein throughout your day. Now, if you're falling below that 1 gram of protein per pound of ideal body mass, timing is actually really critical after your workouts. So, getting in a sufficient amount of protein that might look like somewhere between 30 to maybe even 50 grams of protein after a workout is critical within about 30 minutes if you're not getting enough protein through the day as it relates to protein synthesis, your ability to build, use those amino acids to make some muscle mass. Let me take a step back for a minute. Let's say exercise is something new to you. Well, you're in a really great place. I'll tell you that if you're not currently exercising, and especially doing things like resistance training or weightlifting to build lean muscle mass, the benefits start as soon as you begin. And this can start really small, as simple as even body weight exercises. Now, one thing that I'll tell patients is that it's really critical to establish good, healthy foundations when you get starting with exercise. This might look like for a new person to maybe the gym, getting established with like a personal trainer, someone who can just walk you through some equipment at the gym, walk you through different exercises, and just honestly get you familiar with how to exercise. To know if you're working with a good personal trainer, lifting heavy weights should be the last thing that we start with. We want to first focus on your form. If you aren't going to have good form right out the gate, let's say with like a squat, you are going to find yourself not a matter of if you get injured, but when you will get injured. And the setbacks after that really just aren't good. Some of the muscle imbalances that we'll see. So, really, we want to learn good form. There's a lot of great resources that you can find on YouTube, but getting paired with a good personal trainer might be a great first step in terms of learning how to exercise. The other thing that I'd say is that we want it to be something that's enjoyable for you. Now, that doesn't mean that you're always going to love strength training. Some people, that's not their ideal. Maybe it's going to look like exercise in the form of like bar workouts, or it's going to look like calisthenics, so push-ups, pull-ups, and maybe it's walking with a weighted vest or doing simple things at home. But anything where we're putting the muscle under a little bit of stress, we're trying to actually break down the muscle a little bit to build it up. Those things are going to be conducive to building that lean muscle mass. The other thing that I find is often a barrier for patients, especially in our really busy lives, is timing. People come in and they're like, well, I don't have time for 30 or 60 minutes to get to the gym. That's okay. There's something that we really like talking about here in terms of simplifying your exercise and more so streamlining, and that's the phrase exercise snacks. It's pretty easy throughout the day. We'll either walk by the pantry or stop in the break room and we'll grab a quick snack. Those are also great times where we can get some exercise snacks that might look like maybe it's some air squats, maybe it's some push ups or some burpees. Or if you're walking up the stairs to a meeting, you're doing a couple runs up and down the stairs. Maybe it's wall sits. Some of these things we have access to no matter where we are. And sometimes we overcomplicate what exercise has to look like because maybe it's not in our ideal form. But starting just with small steps, we're already going to start reaping some of those benefits. The other thing is, let's say you've got 15 or maybe it's 30 minutes and you want to get some strength training. How do we streamline your exercise? We really want to kind of go away from some of the single muscle group exercises. So think of like just a bicep curl, where we're working the bicep, but we're really not getting any other muscle groups. This might look like pull-ups. When we're doing a pull-up, we're working the back, we're working the bicep, we're working the brachialis, we're working our forearm muscles, the fingers. We're getting multiple muscle groups here in a compound movement. This also could be like a bench press where we're working the pectoralis or the chest muscles. We're also working our triceps or our extensions. Other exercises where we're getting more bang for your buck is another way where you can streamline exercise and make it more efficient within your busy schedule. Now, when patients are asking me, hey, how many days should I be exercising and what should that look like? The first thing that I'm going to tell them is that it's really going to be a blend between strength training or resistance training and cardio. But one of the foundations, the critical aspects, is that we've got to get resistance training. And ideally, that's going to look like anywhere from about 2 to 4 days per week, trying to target and hit all major muscle groups in the body. And this could be done in as little as, 5 to 30 minutes. Ideally, it might look like a 30 to 45-minute workout, 2 to 4 days per week. Another common question that I'll get is, if I'm going to do cardio and I'm going to strength train, can I do them on the same day? And which should I do first? This is a really great question, and it actually does make a difference. In terms of resistance training and cardio on the same day, that's fine to do, but we want to focus on breaking down the muscle first. When we've got our high reserves of ATP, or the fuel currency of our mitochondria, that energy reserve, that's really where we want to have that for building muscle. And so when we're thinking, doing a bench press or doing some squats. We want to have full energy reserves available to execute those movements. Breaking down the muscle first also makes us less susceptible to injury. So if we do, let's say, a cycling class, or we're doing 30 minutes on the Stairmaster before we go and lift, we have already depleted a lot of that ATP. We're not going to get near as good of a rep. So we're not going to be able to lift as much weight or do as many repetitions. And we're going to be more susceptible to injury because, quite honestly, the muscles are just more fatigued. So breaking down the muscle first, and then if we're doing it on the same day, doing something like a incline treadmill or a stairmaster or swimming or a rower, some form of a healthy cardio is going to be best following breaking down the muscle. Now, one of the other myths that you can probably already gather here is that resistance training is really critical in terms of your metabolic health, especially in terms of navigating and fighting insulin resistance. If you are not building muscle, it will be very challenging for you to ever become insulin sensitive. And honestly, you're going to continue to fight a battle in terms of maintaining a healthy weight, not gaining a lot of fat really quick too. So muscle's so critical for that. A lot of people really have this myth that if I want to lose weight, I just need to do hours and hours of cardio. Honestly, hours and hours of cardio isn't going to do much in terms of muscle building. And also, the type of cardio is really critical. Uh, Most patients that I work with are going to be pretty well versed in something called zone two. Now, zone two, there's actually a lot of literature behind this. Zone two is basically your body's ability to mobilize fat most efficiently as its fuel source or its currency. And we see this all the way down to the level of the mitochondria. Uh, Inigo San Milan is one of the most researched physicians in this space, especially as it relates to endurance athletes and managing insulin resistance at the mitochondrial level. And zone two is really it's the low and slow. You're not winning races when we're doing zone two. Typically, each patient is going to have a different level of what that zone two might look like. And this is something you should really work with a physician for what's going to be an appropriate level for you. But zone two is typically given in a calculation or a goal guidepost of 180 minus your age. Let's say you're 50 years old. So this would look like 130 beats per minute. Now, focusing on 130 beats per minute is not what you need to, set your aim on and make sure that you're in that, because each person's level of cardiorespiratory fitness is going to be the differentiator between what your zone two might look like. So let's say you're at 130 beats per minute. One thing that we do to individualize this to you and your level of fitness is what's called the talk test. Can you complete a full sentence? It's labored. You wouldn't want to talk if you didn't have to, but it's a little labored. I like to say like you can talk, but you wouldn't be able to sing at this level. That really is your zone two. And so if you've got a little bit better of cardiorespiratory fitness, that might look like 140 beats per minute. Now, zone two is a place where we want to hang out majority of the time when we're doing a cardio focused exercise. And we say about 80% of the time. So, what that means is that 20% of the time, if we're above that kind of zone two threshold, we can't really talk or carry on a conversation. That's fine, but we don't want to hang out there for too long. And the opposite would also be true that if we could talk like this in your zone two, that's too easy. We really need to increase that intensity. It should be something that we can do for a long period of time. So, the ideal foundation when it comes to what is a good exercise routine, how do we optimize muscle building and body fat mass loss or burning, that's going to look like a blend between some resistance training for building healthy muscle, strong bones, and also making at the mitochondrial level a insulin sensitive machine, a fat burning machine. Another critical aspect to getting a really solid exercise foundation for you is the timing. When in your day are you going to find is going to be beneficial for you and that you can continue and maintain long term for doing exercise? Now, if a patient asks me, hey, what's the ideal time to exercise? Well, hormonally speaking, and in our chaotic lives, the morning is going to be the best time for exercise. And there's a couple reasons for that. Hormonally, we see the highest levels of cortisol, bringing some energy. That's that bright eye, bushy tail hormone in the morning. Testosterone levels are going to be higher in the morning. And we've just come off of hopefully a good night of sleep. We've got some growth hormone or IGF-1 levels that are going to be better suited in the morning. So, really, in terms hormonally of building muscle, we see better efforts when completed in the morning. The other aspect is that most people live pretty busy lives. I know for me personally, if I don't get a workout done first thing in the morning, I'm a whole lot more likely that something's going to come up that's going to get in my way if I want to do exercise in the afternoon or the evening. Honestly, from my own personal experience, exercising in the morning primes me for my day. It's almost like a non-negotiable where we schedule it into the calendar, we get it done, and it's a night and day difference in terms of productivity, focus, concentration, and it doesn't allow other things to come up and get in the way. Someone messaging you, hey, you want to grab drinks tonight? Do you want to go out for dinner? Kids have soccer practice, you name it. Getting it done in the morning is going to lead to the most likely consistency in terms of your exercise. Now, if you have to exercise in the afternoon or the evening, that's fine. We really want to avoid super high intensity workouts before bed, particularly because of its impact on cortisol in the evening times when we don't really want to see high levels of cortisol. And another thing to really keep in mind in terms of exercise is what is going to be sustainable long term for you. Just like with a diet, people can do 30 days or 8-week challenges and be just fine, but are those things sustainable? Really, exercise is a lifelong prescription for our patients. That is something that really should become part of our lifestyle. So, we want to find things that you enjoy. I really recommend if exercise is new for you, again, getting plugged in with a personal trainer is great, or even maybe joining group classes, something where you've got some accountability or other people around you. Those can be other things to help save you, especially if you're someone who maybe does a month or start of the new year we get those new year's resolutions and then we fall off. We don't want the yo-yoing. We really want to help build something that works within your busy lifestyle, but also something that you enjoy. Exercise should be something that you not only look forward to, but that you also get to see the fruits of your labor. um, if you're working with a provider who is versed in what are the appropriate hormones that I need to have, what should my nutrition look like, timing, and where should I begin, all of these things are something we'd love to help you with here at Protea Medical Center. And each physician is also someone who's practicing what we preach. We don't just talk about these things with patients. All of us are very active in our own lifestyles, and really that's also what is a big separator is that it's easy to talk around something that you're already doing and recommend it for patients. So I highly encourage you to ask these questions of your provider. You should not settle for eat less and exercise more. There's so much more to it, and often I find a lot of things are really overlooked in terms of labs. Getting some of these tangibles that you can really assess and say, okay, how am I doing? Do I have all the necessary components to build healthy muscle mass? And also just things to help drive that motivation, that want to go out and exercise, having enough energy to go and do that, and not completely depleting you of all of your reserves. Structuring an individualized plan tailored toward building healthy lean muscle mass is really critical for your metabolic health. But there's something even more important in terms of muscle mass. This involves your ability to thrive as an individual. As we age, even into our 60s and 70s, and we're spending time with our grandchildren, this is the difference between being able to get down on your knees playing with your grandchildren, or, as a new parent, lifting your kids up or lifting your grandchild up. Some of these things we can often take for granted, and these are things that many people unfortunately struggle with as we age, or even just getting up out of a chair unassisted without using your hands. Some of these things we can really take for granted, but can be real pivotal in our activities of daily living. Feeling better isn't just a matter of looking good in the mirror and those things. It's also how you can go about your day to day, enjoy the people around you, and just truly thrive in all aspects. The last thing that I'd say is that prevention is always the best cure. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, and the second best time to plant a tree is today. The benefits start as soon as you start. So, no matter where you are, whether you're in your 30s and you're starting to notice that it's becoming a little bit more difficult to build some muscle mass and strength, or if you're in your 60s or 70s and you're finding that, you know what, you're really not concerned necessarily with how things look in the mirror, but you want to really optimize everything for healthy bones, preventing fractures, and just everyday living with getting around easy, lifting grandkids, those types of things. No matter where you're at in your journey, we will meet you in an individualized plan tailored toward your goals and needs. If this is something that you resonate with, please reach out, give us a call, talk to your provider. If you want to learn more, or if you want to get scheduled with one of the physicians here at Protea Medical Center, we'd love to get started. The easiest place for you to do that is to check out our website at protealife.com, where you can learn more and you can get all the information you need for scheduling and contact information. We really look forward to working with you, and thanks for your time.